Hello everyone, this week's video is going to be all about using video autofocus on the Sony FX3. Now just to be clear, this is squarely aimed at video use, so this is about video autofocus. I'm not covering off any of the options for autofocus for stills use because some of the options do vary, and also most of what I cover here will probably apply to the Sony A7SIII as well, because I know it has the same features, but because that one has an EVF, I know it does have a few additional options as well. But I'm sure most of what I do cover here will also cover that camera if you're shooting video with it. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by looking at the autofocus section in the camera's menu. First up is focus mode. We have two choices here, manual focus or continuous autofocus. So let's choose continuous autofocus. The next two options in the menu are transition speed and shift sensitivity. We'll come back and look at these later, but for now let's set both of these to the default middle settings, which is speed on 4 and sensitivity on 3. I'm also going to disable face tracking for now. Again, we'll come back to look at face tracking later, but for now we'll disable that so that it doesn't confuse matters when we're looking at the basics with autofocus. In order to demonstrate focus areas, I've dressed up smart and flown in a special guest all the way from Canada. Please welcome to my channel, Gerald Undone.
Gerald Undone.
To select the focus areas, we can either go into the main menu and then from there go into focus area, or as you'll see me doing in this video, I'm going to be using the function menu. Okay, so let's start with the wide focus area. With wide focus area selected, the camera has the whole frame to choose an object to focus on. As I pan around, it's finding areas to keep in focus. However, it's quite tricky to understand the logic that the camera uses to select subjects. As you can see here, the camera's preferring to choose me. So how do we go about defining which object we want to be in focus? One of the ways to do that is to use a smaller focus area. So next, let's go and look at zone. Zone is a smaller area that can be moved around the screen using the joystick on the camera. With a smaller area, it's possible to be more selective. You'll notice though that if our subjects are still in the same area, the camera will still make the decision about who to focus on. Sorry, Gerald. Next up, we've got center fix. This one's self-explanatory. It fixes a smaller focus area in the center of the frame. This area cannot be moved with the joystick. As I pan the camera around, notice that it focuses on whoever appears to be behind this focus area in the center of the frame. Note, however, that as the focus area passes between me and Gerald, it cannot focus on the background, so the camera will start to pulse because it cannot find an object to focus on. So using a smaller focus area can be more precise and allow you to pick subjects in the frame. However, you do need to be careful about where you place the focus area. The next focus area we're going to look at is spot. When you choose spot, you can choose between three sizes, small, medium, or large. Spot can be moved around using the joystick and allow you to focus on smaller objects in the frame. Now finally we move on to expand spot. Now, this is very similar to the normal spot focus area. However, with this one, it's divided into two parts. In the very center, there's a square which has the priority focus area, so anything in that center will always be focused on first. However, unlike with the normal spot focus area, if that center square moves off of the subject, rather than start trying to focus on wherever the center square is, the camera will then give the next level of priority to the outer square. Let's go back into the menu. The next thing we're going to look at is focus area limit. Focus area limit allows you to choose which of these focus areas to include in the menus. So this applies both to the function menu and if you're using a button to cycle between focus areas. Next up, we've got focus area color. This allows you to choose between either red or white focus area boxes on the screen. Personally, I prefer the white, so I'm going to set mine back to white. Next up, we've got circulate focus point. By default, when you move the focus area around on the screen, it will stop when it hits the edge of the frame. If you set this to circulate, that doesn't happen, and when you hit one side of the screen, the focus area will jump to the opposite side of the screen and continue moving in the same directions. This happens both side to side and up and down. I actually prefer mine to stop on the edge of the frame, so I'm going to leave mine on does not circulate. The next option is autofocus frame movement amount. Now this one controls the distance that the focus area moves with each press of the joystick. I leave mine at standard because it makes the area selection more precise. However, if you change this to large, then you'll notice that each press of the joystick will make the focus area move a larger amount. I'm going to change mine back to standard. Okay, so now that we've looked at focus areas and how they work, let's go back and talk about the transition speed and shift sensitivity, because that affects all of the autofocusing on the camera. The first one, transition speed, is the speed at which the camera will focus from one point to another. Let's begin by putting that on the slowest setting and then focusing between Gerald and myself. Now as we focus between the two subjects, you will see the transition speed is very slow. So let's go back and now change that to 7, which is fast. Now doing the same thing, you'll notice that the camera focuses quickly between the two subjects. So for now, let's leave that in the middle on 4. Next, we've got shift sensitivity. This changes how quickly the camera responds to changes within the focus area. Let's start by setting this to 5 responsive. Now if something were to move in front of the focus area, you'll notice that the camera will respond very quickly and try to change focus as quickly as possible. That's strange. Anyway, let's try changing it to 1 locked on and see how that handles it differently. You'll notice here that as something moves into the foreground, the camera won't immediately react and actually doesn't even change autofocus because the object moving into the focus area isn't there long enough for it to change focus. Both of these settings need to be adjusted depending on the subject that you're shooting. Most of the time I leave my camera on 1 for both options, which works well for, say, talking heads, as the camera isn't adjusting for every tiny movement. If you're shooting a fast moving object though, you'll want to increase the sensitivity and likely the focus speed as well. Let's leave them both in the middle default settings for now. Let's look at face and eye detection. I'll enable face detection in the main menu, however you can do the same thing in the function menu if you've got a slot set up to do that. When a face is detected outside of the focus area, a black box will be drawn around it, but the camera won't focus on it until the face is inside the focus area. If we move the focus area over the faces, the camera will then focus on that face and the surrounding box will turn white. If more than one face is detected inside the focus area, the camera will then decide itself which one has priority. If you want to override this and choose one of those two faces to give priority to, there's 2 ways of doing this. The first is to reduce the size of the focus area so that only the face that you want to be in focus is inside of the focus area. This will work well if the camera's on a tripod and the subjects you're trying to focus on are fairly static. The second option is to use the Register Faces feature and tell the camera which face to give priority to. To do this, you have to switch the camera to a stills mode. I'll switch to aperture priority. From there we'll go to the menu and we'll find Focus, Face Eye Autofocus, and then Face Memory. And from there we're going to choose New Registration. Then you just frame the person's face and press the shutter button. Once captured, select Enter. So now I'll switch back to movie mode, and when we put both faces in the focus area, the camera recognises me and gives me priority. Notice though that the camera will still only focus on me as long as my face is inside the focus area. If I move the focus area over Gerald, then the camera will focus on him and draw a purple box around my face. This signifies that whilst I'm not in focus, my face is still registered. Gerald just had a little diva moment and politely mentioned that if anybody should have a purple box, it's him. So let's go ahead and register his face in the same way. So we'll go back into photo mode, and then we're going to go into the menu and choose Focus, Face Eye Autofocus, Face Memory, and then choose New Registration. Then we're going to frame Gerald's face and press the shutter button. Once captured, press Enter. Now when we go back, Gerald looks a lot happier in his purple box. Notice now though that if both of our faces are in the focus area, that the camera's still giving the priority to me. So let's go back into photo mode and we'll change the settings so that Gerald has priority. This time we'll go into the same menu, but we're going to choose Order Exchanging. I'm going to select Gerald's face, who's currently in position 2, and then move him to position 1. Now when we go back into movie mode, you'll notice immediately that the camera is given priority to Gerald's face. There you go, Gerald. So let's quickly go through the other face detection options in the menu. So the first one, Face Eye Priority in Autofocus, basically switches on and off face/eye detection. So the face eye subject can be changed between animal and human. However, that only works for stills. In video mode, currently it only works with humans. Okay, next we've got right left eye select. If for some reason you need to focus on one side of someone's face, then you can do that with this option. Okay, so let's change that to right eye. And you can see that the camera now is focusing on Gerald's right eye. Change it to left eye. Again, it's focusing on his left eye. And now we'll change it back to auto and the camera will automatically select which eye to focus on. Next we have the Face Eye Frame Display option, which allows you to turn on or off the frames around faces. So finally we've got Register Faces Priority. This enables and disables the face priority function that I've just shown you. Okay, finally we're going to look at touch focusing. For either touch focusing or touch tracking to work, you need to make sure that the touch operation is enabled in the setup menu. For this, go to the main menu, go down to Setup, then go to Touch Operation. From here you can turn the touch operation on or off, or set it so that it only works during playback. These settings not only affect touch focusing, but also all touchscreen operations, such as using the menus. You can also adjust the sensitivity of the touchscreen, or set the default touch function during shooting to either be touch focus or touch tracking. I'm going to set touch focus as the default. On the top of the display you will see a small box showing the current status of the touch function. If you touch this box, it cycles between touch focus, touch tracking, and off. If you can't see this box, you may need to cycle through the display options as it doesn't show in all of them. So let's leave it on touch focus for now and focus on Gerald. With the camera now focused, the screen says spot focus, and essentially the lens is now switched to manual focus. You can reframe and the camera will hold that focus setting regardless of what the subject does. So this is a one-time focus operation. The nice thing about this mode is that you can then toggle between different focus points and the camera will adjust focus using the transition speeds that we set earlier in the menu. So this is a really nice way to get slow transitions between two objects. Here you can see I'll do a focus pull between myself and Gerald. All the time that touch focus is active, you can also manually adjust focus using the lens. To cancel spot focus, you can press the center button on the back of the camera, which will return you to autofocus and re-enable whichever focus area was previously being used. Let's tap the box to change to focus tracking. Once enabled, when you touch an area on the screen, the camera will attempt to track that object and keep it in focus. Let's do that now with Gerald. So as Gerald moves around now, the camera is going to do all it can to keep him in focus. You'll notice that the tracking area is staying attached to Gerald's face. The tracking feature is really intelligent, especially when working with faces. If I pan away from the faces that are currently being tracked, When, however, the person we are tracking returns to the frame, the camera will automatically switch back to tracking and track that person again. Once again, to cancel tracking, you simply press the center button on the back of the camera or use the small box on the display. Now I was going to cover off how I configure my camera for shooting autofocus, but because this video's now got long, it's probably around 20 minutes long, I'm going to save that for another video, so when I'll be going over into more detail about how I use these features when I'm out shooting. Now before I go, I just want to say a huge thanks to my guests in the video. So that's Gerald Undone and Casey from Camera Conspiracies. I mean, I'm sure I don't need to tell you about these guys. They've got fantastic channels and I'll link them down below. If you have any questions, then please do leave a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.